3.6 recap and analysis. Now hit a story quest 2 and the parry. This is going to be a lot, I think, to take in. It's a long video too, 30 minutes. Okay, we don't got this. No, we do. I believe. Let's go.
Version 3.6. The version where all theories go to die. Just kidding. This changes nothing. But it did fill in some blanks, and I am thrilled to be able to pop a few of these new puzzle pieces right into place. Finally, the timeline begins to make a little bit more sense. Now, this video will be compiling everything we learned from Nahida's second story quest, as well as the Kavarina of Good and Evil world quest.
Ah, yes.
Which I'm just gonna call the
Nikita's story quest.
Oh, and before we start, I just want to mention that if you'd like a full chronological timeline of all the historical events in Sumeru, I will leave a link in the description to my Beginner's Guide to Genshin Lore Sumeru edition.
Oh, yeah.
I think it'll help put some of the events found in the 3.6 quests into context, and for that reason, I won't be going into too...
There was a lot of content in 3.x patches, chat. Now, I'm a player that plays mainly for the story, right? I don't really get too much into the combat side of things, but I enjoy it sometimes. So when it comes to story and lore stuff, I always love it. I really hope Fontaine is better, but I don't see how it could be, dude. Because I remember people say this about when Inazuma finished. People were like, oh yeah, no, Inazuma wasn't that good. Sumeru's gotta be good. And it was incredible. How could it get better than the Sumeru stuff? I don't know.
Too much detail about the overall timeline in this video. Okay? So we have a lot to get through, and I don't really know where to start, so I'm just gonna pick a topic
at random. Is the volume okay, by the way, chat?
And here we go. Apep is the first ancient dragon that we've met still in her original form. Ajdaha was sealed and eroding to the point where he was merely a shadow of his former self, and Dvalin is a wee little baby. No, really, like, Dvalin is really super young in dragon years. Yeah. Comparatively, anyway. Now, Apep confirms that she was around in a time before Celestia and the Heavenly Principles, and that Sumeru was her territory, which may, emphasis on the may, make her one of the original.
Inazuma wasn't even bad, it's just not what we expected. No, I don't think it was bad. I don't think any part of the story of the game is bad, but I do feel like certain parts of Inazuma felt very rushed. Like, compared to Sumeru, the quests are really long and stuff. Inazuma could have done with a couple of extra hours in, like, a couple of different parts, honestly. It really could.
That ruled to that before humans. She also tells of a war between the dragons and the Heavenly Principles, who appeared to be not native to Tevat, and this war nearly destroyed the entire world. This is in line with what we know from the book Before Sun and Moon, which says that the Primordial One, who would be the Heavenly Principles in this case, fought and won a war against the dragons. But Apep's story begins to differ from our only Genesis record in that she claims Sumeru was originally a lush rainforest under her rule. But according to Before Sun and Moon, the Primordial One was the one to create all life,
Before Sun and Moon, we're getting into
life.
It already,
But this is obviously not the case if Sumeru was already a rainforest before their arrival. Thus, I think the only thing that can be attributed to the Primordial One from Before Sun and Moon is the creation of humans and the firmament. Unless you want to claim that the Primordial One created a bunch of new types of plants, which, in that case, yeah, sure, that's plausible, but they didn't create the concept of plants, which makes them a little less godlike. But we'll touch on this a little bit more later. Now, this book series here states that Vishops originally lived in the light realm, which is synonymous with the elemental realm. Vishop is the Armenian word for dragon, so this statement would include notable dragons like Dvalin and Ajdaha, which makes sense because they appear to be made from pure elemental energy, which is in stark contrast to beings said to be from the so-called human realm. Those beings cannot innately use elemental energy, but instead have to borrow it from the environment around them.
Dude, that quest was so cute,
This is likely why humans are said to require visions in order to manipulate the elements. They're not native. What's curious here is that the so-called light or elemental realm appears to...
Oh, I need something else like Enconomia in the game, dude. No lie here, I think my favorite memories and just times of playing the game was Enconomia. Genuinely, I loved Enconomia so fucking much when it first came out.
Be just normal to that.
It was just so
ruled the
different.
Same land that Nahida now rules, so it wasn't technically recreated.
An Atlantis-esque city could be really cool, like underwater ruins like that. That'd be kind of sick.
The Dragon King, Nibelung, believed that they could leverage forbidden knowledge to fight the invading Heavenly Principles, and we know that forbidden knowledge comes from the Abyss, which is also known as the Void Realm. So when the people of Enconomia talked about the three realms, the light, human, and void realms, they seem to be describing Tevat as it already existed during the era of dragons, with the light realm being Tevat, an elemental realm ruled by dragons, the void realm being the abyss, full of forbidden knowledge, and the human realm being something kind of new brought in by the invaders. So the heavenly principles and the stuff they made. I promise we'll come back to the Nibelung thing later, just bear with me. Previously, it had been implied that the Primordial One created
the Nibelung stuff definitely still confuses me quite a lot. I'm excited to learn a little bit more about that. Out of everything from the parry stuff, the Nibelung stuff and the ring is the stuff that still kind of goes over my head a little bit.
World by combining the three realms, but now it seems like that's pretty inaccurate. They didn't recreate the world at all. What they did do is hurl a celestial nail down at the earth, or many of them, actually.
Yep.
One of these nails hit Sumeru and instantly turned the entire rainforest into a vast desert. So I suppose if similar things happened elsewhere, we could say they recreated the land through a type...
So, dude, the nail hit Sumeru and turned it into a desert. Just imagine. Imagine we get to Fontaine, it's all steampunky, and then a nail just hits it, sinks the full fucking thing.
Of terraforming again, but it's nowhere near the omniscient levels of divine creation as you would expect from something equivalent to the god of all gods.
Fontaine just becomes Atlantis. That'd be sick.
I want to explore this idea a lot more in the finale of My Colony to That series, but before we move on, fun fact. The goddess of flowers, prior to being cast out of Celestia, used to dance upon the dunes with the three sisters of the moon, implying that the three moon sisters existed post-dragon battle, since there would have been no desert dunes until after the celestial nails struck Sumeru.
Yeah.
So, the
True.
death of the three moon sisters would have happened before the Archon War, since the goddess of flowers was exiled after their deaths and met Deshret long after that. And it was only after Deshret and the Goddess of Flowers became friends that Celestia offered Deshret a gnosis, which should have taken place during the Archon War, which started at least 3,000 years ago. And
Jesus Christ. Okay, hold on. Fucking timeline stuff. Let me go back a little bit here, because this is actually pretty
given that
important timeline stuff.
The three moon sisters would have happened before the Archon War, since the Goddess of Flowers was exiled after their deaths and met Deshret long after that. And it was only after Deshret and the Goddess of Flowers became friends that Celestia offered Deshret a gnosis, which should have taken place during the Archon War, which started at least 3,000 years ago. And given that Rukkhadevata is both younger than Apep and the creator of the forests of Sumeru, she would have had to have been born after the celestial nail in the desert dropped. And
okay, but which came first though, the chicken or the egg?
Since she's the avatar of Irminsul, that means that Irminsul is very
chicken
possibly
happen,
younger than the dragons. It could very well be a creation of the Primordial One, but that's heavy speculation territory, which means we'll have to talk about it in another upcoming video.
Oh god.
For now, here's my conclusion with the rough order of historical events. First, dragons ruled the whole world. It was
Sad
theirs.
scene.
Then the Primordial One came and invaded and smote them all. Then humans took over under the guidance of the Moon Sisters and the Seelies. Then the moons died and the Goddess of Flowers was exiled, and around the same time Enkanomiya should have sunk beneath the sea. Then Deshret and the Goddess of Flowers would have met and become friends, also Rukkhadevata at some point in there. And then the Archon War happened, and then we're caught up. At this point, I'm becoming more and more convinced the death of the Moon Sisters is what triggered...
That is very Dark Souls, isn't it? Holy shit. Yeah, I just realized that. That is very Dark Souls. God damn. Dark Souls 1 specifically.
The Archon War, but I lack solid evidence for this, so that's just speculation for now. All of this is speculation. Why am I adding a disclaimer? Anyway, moving
Always
on.
Speculation.
A history lesson
Knowledge and
wasn't
energy.
the only thing that Apep gave us. She also gave us a little insight into the nature of forbidden knowledge.
She also gave chat fucking questioning their sanity on why they want to fuck a dragon.
As well as elemental energy's relationship with memories. See, Irminsul and its leyline network collect a mix of elemental energy and memories, but the relationship between the two was never really clear.
True.
But Apep states that memories of her fragments have been converted into elemental energy and therefore reassimilated inside of her. This means that elemental energy and memories are interchangeable. Again, I have a whole video on this topic in the works, so forgive me if I don't dive too deep
The answer
into
is
the
always
implications
yes.
of this for right now. But all of this explains why Nahida shrinks and loses her memories every time she releases massive amounts of her energy. As a god, she's primarily made up of raw elemental energy, so if she's...
Do you all think... Okay, hear me out here. Do you all think... Because I think it's hinting towards it a lot, especially in the second story quest with Nahida and stuff, and the world quest stuff. Like, when a powerful entity uses up a lot of their power in a big way, they shrink. Do y'all realistically think that is what happened to Paimon? I think she was a previous Archon of some kind. I think she was possibly like maybe even pre-Tavat. I don't know.
Spends that energy, she's literally paying the price with the...
Maybe she is the... Can you imagine, dude, if Paimon is the goddess of time, and the reason we keep finding her in this cycle is because at the end of the cycle, she always uses her power to reset the cycle, and that's the reason... Uh-oh.
Makeup of her body, and that same energy is
Holy shit.
interchangeable with her memories. Worth pointing out too that the
Wait a minute.
Azosite that powers Conrian technology is actually elementally based. It's the result of fusing together all 7 types of elemental energy, and the result of that is a gold power source, like the power of the twins. This is the point when I realized that outside of the opening cutscene, the only times we've seen the twins successfully use their special gold power is when there are other characters spanning all 7 elements present.
I just got fucking goosebumps. I never fucking realized that.
The twins. This is the point when I realized that outside of the opening cutscene, the only times we've seen the twins successfully use their special gold power is when there are other characters spanning all 7 elements present. Curiously, there's no mention of forbidden knowledge or abyssal energy being used in Conrian technology. If it runs on elemental energy, then that might be why. Now, previously, we've just assumed that forbidden knowledge was incompatible with other forms of energy or memory since it's known to corrupt things. However, a pep implies that she possesses the ability to decrypt it in small quantities, and it's possible that the Dragon King Nibelung had this ability as well, since they also wanted to use it to fight Heaven. Ironically, King Deshret also had this plan to fight Heaven using the exact same method as the dragons. Acquire forbidden knowledge and use it to do something against the heavenly principles.
Bro, I will say, from what we know about Deshret is one of the smartest people in this entire video game lore history, dude. Deshret was so fucking clever. Conniving, but clever, dude. So smart. He was hella big brain. Deshret might be one of my favorite characters that we've never seen, I think.
And how curious is it that the sustainer of heavenly principles kinda looks corrupted?
I've been saying this for so long, dude. I've been saying this for so long. I said it not long ago, but nobody seemed to mention it. Remember me saying, chat? Nobody ever seemed to mention the fact that the sustainer of heavenly principles looks like she's got the Cambriar cubes going up her arm, and it looks like it's corrupted data. And then the cubes are all red and stuff. It looks like corrupted data. It does.
Curious is it that the sustainer of heavenly principles kinda looks...
And the red stars on the inside as well. Yeah, she looks like she's getting corrupted. It's corrupted data. I always said that.
Looks corrupted. Now, is that corruption from the Dragon King or Deshret or the second who came? Who knows? Again, we'll talk about this more in another video. Regardless of who it was, Deshret acquired so much forbidden knowledge with these...
Which is why when we hear Dane say, like, show me that you are stronger than I, or more worthy than I to rescue her, I think he's talking about the Sustainer. I don't think he's talking about Lumine in that scene. I think the Sustainer's getting corrupted, and the Sustainer is actually a good person, but the corruption is taking over. I genuinely think Dane is talking about the Sustainer in that cutscene thing, dude.
Existence of the goddess of flowers.
I will stick with that.
When Apep swallowed his dead body whole, as agreed, she was unable to process the sheer amount of the forbidden knowledge, and it really messed with her head and body, which was also apparently part of Deshret's
true,
plan.
Nightcore, 100%.
We'll also talk about this god-eating thing in a minute, so stay focused.
I'd love to eat a god.
If you think about it, forbidden knowledge can be straight up deleted by Irminsul, so if Deshret wanted to leverage that power against Heaven itself, he would have needed to have a way to prevent them from just deleting his weapon. Now, Nahida says that forbidden knowledge cannot be preserved, but that it can be converted into another form.
Wine?
What I think she means here is that she was able to delete all the forbidden knowledge in the world when she messed with Irminsul, but only in the form that she recognized. We've seen that forbidden knowledge can be converted into other forms, like the dark mud in the chasm, and that change was different enough to make it exempt from deletion. So it's possible that Deshret's plan may have been more of an experiment trying to understand how forbidden knowledge interacts with elemental energy and how he could prevent its deletion. More on Deshret in a bit, but another fun fact, it seems like one of the fragments of Apep was actually responsible for using that celestial nail in the chasm to convert all of the forbidden knowledge in the area into the mud, which apparently a slightly more stable form and therefore less toxic.
Yeah,
Now,
we remember that. The little
less of a fun
geoshroom,
fact
right?
and more of just a nitpick on my part, but Nahida's deletion of forbidden knowledge still feels a bit contentious to me because outside of the converted mud, withering zones still persist post-deletion. There are a couple of lines that say that deleting the forbidden knowledge left a void behind, and that void is what made the fragments of Apep sick. And those sick fragments degraded until they turned into tumors of the withering, and since she can't delete a void, those zones persisted. And I guess it makes sense, but it's kind of weird, and I don't really like it. Okay, now it's Deshret time. Apep confirmed that Deshret's demon name is Amun, which confirms that he's a reference to the Egyptian sun god Amun-Ra. And it's incredibly fitting that Apep swallowed him whole because in Egyptian mythology, the serpent Apep does in fact swallow the sun god Ra whole every night. Now, before you all say, Deshret is dead, stop talking about him, I don't care, I will first direct you to my beginner's guide to Sumeru video.
And then direct them to the fucking door, because anyone that doesn't care about Deshret is just wrong, and that is a fact.
For the timeline specificity, and then I will remind you that Deshret planned to get eaten. In fact, we have records that Deshret died by sitting on the throne of the Golden Slumber, and his body was then eaten by worms. This worm, apparently, a very big worm. I'm making a pun here. It only works when it's written down, though.
Nah, he ain't dead. Nah, he fucking is. Nah, he is. He's definitely dead. He might come back at some point, but he's dead.
But the
he's
thing
dead as shit, just like
he
Senora.
didn't actually die here. Not completely. Part of the goal of the Golden Slumber was for him to find a way to separate body and soul, which he seems to have done rather successfully. Apep ate his body, but Nahida would later seal his soul deep underground. So as
This chat, okay, dude. I'm cooking today, okay? But I have to say this again because it just adds up. This fucking cutscene right here pretty much solidifies in my own head that Deshret is the sinner. The crystal that we saw. Because watch.
But Nahida would later seal his soul deep underground.
Sealing Deshret's soul
so as far
deep
as
underground.
I'm concerned,
it goes into the pool.
Deshret's still in the game. And there
comes back up as a fucking crystal. Big purple bitch crystal. Big motherfucking deep voice sexy crystal. It's fucking Deshret.
There's still a good chance that he's the sinner. In fact, I was going to make this topic into its own video, and I still
can't not
might,
be,
but
dude. It's
for
gotta
now,
be.
I have to talk about it here because it's relevant. In my Kari Bear analysis video, I made the case for Kaveh to be an allegory for Deshret as his incarnation as a sun deity. Not a reincarnation, mind you, just an allegorical one. For literary purposes only. Kaveh is thematically colored in red, fitting for the Scarlet King, and he wears earrings that match the architectural symbolism inside some of the tombs, and he even created an artificial intelligence, ironically naming it Marak, which means little sun or little light. Plus, he's an architect, and Deshret was a very prolific builder and machinist. Kaveh also uses the morning flowers for his ascension items, and this flower appears to be based on this real-world flower, which is aptly named the Red Crown. Now, I, among others, have proposed that Deshret, the Black Sun of the Desert, bears a striking resemblance to the Black Star of Conria, and at the end of the Pari quest, we get to go to a door that leads directly to Conria, and at that door, there is a single morning flower. And yeah, I know this flower might supposed to be representing the person who died here that was like written in the letter, but bear with me.
That's how I saw it.
Constellation is literally the same as Kaya's, but with the bird's wings open instead of closed. And I don't
I mean, okay. Where's this going?
think that's a coincidence either.
It's a different
Plus,
bird,
I am
though.
thoroughly convinced that Deshret is supposed to be based, at least in half, on Auto Apocalypse from Honkai Impact, and if you put the two side by side, yeah, they kind of fit.
I mean, she's not wrong. They do, but how the fuck have I never made that connection, dude? God, they're so vastly different, though, as well. That's probably why. Holy shit.
Especially if you're familiar with Honkai's story and you know anything at all about
Goddamn.
Honkai. This might actually start to make sense, especially if you look at Nahida as being Teresa and Rukkhadevata as being Colin. And I could go down the Honkai hole for like an hour, and so I don't want to do that right now. So I'll
Am I gonna get
stop.
spoiled here? Should I not look?
Yeah,
I'm just gonna look
I'm
at
a little
chat.
bit biased.
Am I going to watch
Kaveh,
chat?
So people are probably sitting there like, what about Alhaitham? He has the
No?
same
Okay, cool.
eyes as
She's done.
Deshret. Shouldn't he be the incarnation of Deshret as well? Do you see any raw symbolism on this guy? Like, really? He's green, for one. He's not red. It's a Scarlet King. But, you know, you're still not totally off base. I do think Alhaitham is still an allegory for Deshret, just in a different form. Consider, if Deshret died and managed to separate his soul from his body, then
Alhaitham would be the worm that ate him.
he is now
He's just a worm
ghost
to Kaveh.
of a dead god, or maybe a god of the dead, like Osiris. Now, Osiris has coloring that matches Alhaitham. His constellation is also that of a vulture, and that's very fitting for the god of the dead, and the symbolism on his chest is found on a mural in Gurabad, which lines up with the timeline around the time when Deshret should have died. So Alhaitham having Deshret's eyes makes sense because Deshret that we've seen isn't in his Ra state, but in his Osiris state. This is also probably why Aru village, which was founded upon Deshret's ideals, is named after Osiris's realm, the Field of Reeds. It's also kind of ironic and just very fitting that Alhaitham's story quest is a cautionary tale about hive minds when Deshret as Ra literally built a hive mind, the Golden Slumber. And if you think about Kaveh as being like the Ra one, and how canonically Alhaitham's always telling him to like stop burning yourself out, stop trying to help other people, stop doing this, stop doing that. Like it's just fitting. It's like the angel and the devil on your shoulder. Anyway, I might still make this into its own video because there's a lot to cover, and I have like a million Honkai Impact connections that I want to make here, but for the sake of brevity and your sanity, I'll stop. We'll talk about something else now.
Hell yeah.
Okay.
That was a perfect timing cutoff. Quorana.
I lied. Listen, everything in the
fucking
desert
hell.
dies back to Deshret and the goddess of flowers, and the story of the Peri is no different.
Why'd you lie?
So in his attempt to fight heaven, Deshret needed to convince the goddess of flowers to help him. She thought his chances of success were very, very bleak. So before she granted him access to forbidden knowledge, and who the heck knows why she had access to that in the first place,
Sus.
the goddess of flowers created a daughter, which gets called the Kavarna a bunch of times. And I'm probably butchering that. I'm sorry. I'm trying my best.
I butchered it for so long, dude, but I think chat said it was Quorana. Is that right, chat? Quorana?
Kavarna literally means divine spark or power. So functionally, the goddess of flowers was just taking chunks of her divinity or her elemental energy and giving it a new external shape to protect the land while she was gone.
Madara, sleep
Now,
well.
she gave
Thank you for
this
hanging out.
daughter over to Rukkhadevata before following Deshret to her death. The Kavarna lived with Rukkhadevata for a time before the Gender Archon reshaped her into a divine bird that she calls
What the
Simurgh.
fuck?
The Simurgh would leave for the Vorukasha Oasis, where she would then
Yo, the Adepti got fucking hungry, dude. Ate up Zhongli and Venti. What the fuck is this? Jesus Christ.
go on to raise Lilupar's son, Kisra,
Wait, who's hanging on the fucking foot? Hibeko, are you okay?
and then sleep until the Cataclysm, supposedly. According to the other Archons, Celestia instructed them to go to Conria to deal with the monster infestation that was pouring out from beneath the earth. It was assumed that all Archons went there, but it turns out that two of them at least never made it. Rukkhadevata and the former Hydro Archon both went to Tanigi Hollow, where the former Hydro Archon died, her body rupturing and turning into the pristine waters of the Amrita. Rukkhadevata then grew a great tree from her remains to
Funny, isn't it? How the Hydro Archon dies and creates this pretty-ass pool in this little cave that people can go visit, and then, you know, the goddess of salt dies and fucking murders everybody within a 10-mile proximity by bursting out into a fucking salt nuke.
anchor her
No,
soul
just
to the
saying.
mortal
It's fucking
realm.
unexpected.
Then she left the area to tend to Irminsul. This left the responsibility
Kind
of
of
driving
insane.
back the abyss to the Simurgh. So to do this, the Simurgh decided to dive into the Amrita to harness its powers, but instead of gaining its powers, it shattered into thousands of tiny petals. Some of these petals were blessed by the Amrita and became the race known as the Peri, while the rest of these little bits of the Simurgh became
Salt Nuke
these
is
little
more
green
iconic.
fairies, which are called, get this, the power of the Kavarna.
Ooh.
Now, one of the Academia's former Darshans joined up with the Pari and took arms against the Abyss, earning them the titles of Nagarjunites, or the Order of Skeptics, depending on who you ask. At some point during the Cataclysm, Zurvan, the very first of the Pari, had a chance encounter with Dainsleif, who was clutching a single ring in his hand. We'll come back to this.
Yeah, of course we will.
He joined Zurvan in the fight against the
Nibelung.
Abyss and later had a one-armed sage from the east join them as well. Conrian lore aside, the genealogy here is very interesting because these little dudes technically have 3 moms. Basically, the original deity was the goddess of flowers who crafted the Caverna, who was then transformed into a Persian phoenix by the Dendro Archon, who was then split into little Seelie-looking...
Hold the fuck. Transformed into a fucking what?
Side, the genealogy
A
here is
Persian
very
phoenix?
interesting because these little dudes technically have 3 moms. Basically, the original deity
Did
was
I
the
miss
goddess of
something?
flowers who crafted the Caverna, who was then transformed into a Persian phoenix by the Dendro Archon, who was then split into little Seelie-looking flower floaties and green fairies by the former Hydro Archon's dead god juice. It really makes you take a second look at all the Seelies, and also at the elemental entities that lived inside of a Pep, because they look a hell of a lot like the Caverna fairies, and if both are made out of pure concentrated Dendro energy, the similarities start to make some more sense.
A bit.
Consider the fact that Venti was just another one of 1,000 winds, and he's got a pretty similar look to the Caverna in his original form. It's very possible that he's like a Peri equivalent of Istaroth. What's kind of cool about these little
That's an
sprites is
interesting
that they
thought.
explain some oddities about Rukkhadevada's actions during the Cataclysm as described in the Folio of Foliage. For example, when it says lotuses bloomed at her feet, this may have been because the Caverna sprites were aiding her in combat. They had the power of the goddess of flowers, who had lotuses and parisaras appear whenever she walked, so it makes sense for this trait to show up alongside Rukkhadevada here. I also want to point out that the fire seed Nahida used could very well have been a crystallized divine spark of a Pep for use in emergency situations. After all, we know that when very powerful elemental creatures have their energies violently dispersed, they warp the land. Havria turned everyone into salt, Orobashi turned into the Tataragami, Guizhong seems to have become a thick dust cloud that blots out the sky, and a Pep would, in theory, cause the rainforest
Poor Guizhong did. Poor fucking Guizhong.
to explode with growth. Now, with that
Sad
in
story.
mind, let's talk Dragon King for a second, because I missed this detail the first time through, but a Pep says that not only was the Dragon King killed, but that he came back long after the world had been overtaken by the heavenly principles. But we haven't heard a damn thing about this so-called
Dragon King's back?
Dragon King in modern times, or in any books for that matter.
Natlan?
Or have we? Now, you may have seen this theory that Wei made, suggesting that Zhongli may be a shade of the primordial one. Let me put a new spin on this idea.
Dragon King.
Zhongli is the only Archon thus far to have a draconic form. His arms are veined in gold, and he's got more suspicious imagery surrounding him than you can
he
take
has
a stick
dragon
at.
scales
Like, take this, for example.
on his clothes.
His constellation matches up with this symbol at the top of the domain mural that many thought represented the primordial one and its 4
That's a stretch.
shades.
Kinda.
But what if Zhongli is actually the second coming of the Dragon King, but might not know it? What if he's a bit like Nahida, that after dying or expending massive amounts of energy, he is eventually reborn, but without memories? Memories and elemental energy are interchangeable, after all. Now, this theory is obviously not fully formed yet, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on, because I have...
He does have dragon scales on his outfit as well, Chan.
Especially because I made this one video a really long time ago about Zhongli being a dragon prince. In light of there being a dragon king, I wonder. I mean, obviously that theory is probably very wrong, but the idea is there.
It's shaped like bits, it kind of is.
Although, a Pep calls the Dragon King Nibelung, and this name is a very overt reference to the Germanic Nibelungenlied, which
This is the part where my brain is going to get absolutely fucking destroyed. Just a heads up, chat.
is best known by its operatic adaptation, The Ring Cycle by Wagner. Now, in the epic and the opera, the Nibelung are a race of dwarves ruled over by a dwarf king named Albric, who only got the position because he stole all the powerful gold from the daughters of the River Rhine, so the Rhine daughters, and fashioned it into a ring of power.
Yep.
Now, Amfortis Albric became the regent of Conria, taking over for King Ermin when he became indisposed, while Clotar Albric went on to form the Abyss Order hundreds of years later. Dainsleif was found in...
Sorry, I love how the traveler just pops out there.
Went on to form the Abyss Order hundreds of years later. Dainsleif was found in Sumeru during the Cataclysm, clutching a ring. So you remember how I mentioned many times in many videos that King Deshret might be King Ermin, or at least was responsible in part for the founding of Conria? Well, Deshret wanted to use the same plan as Nibelung, the Dragon King, and leverage forbidden knowledge from the Abyss to overthrow Heaven. Similar goals and methods, all leading back to a ring carried by one of a few Conrian survivors. Now, there are a couple of interesting theories out there, like this one by Roosevelt, suggesting that Conrians may possess dragon blood, and that might be more likely than you'd think. China holds dragons as the most divine of all creatures, and that's why they were the symbol of royalty. And the regent family was named after the dwarf Albric. And the only other dwarven names I can remember in this game right now are Dvalin and Durin, and those are both the names of dragons.
Oh, she's right. Fuck, she's right.
Even Dainsleif is the name of a sword crafted by dwarves. It's a very interesting literary choice if there's nothing more to it. In case any of you weren't convinced by this point that Hoyoverse really loves Nibelungenlied, I hope you're convinced by now.
Nibelungenlied.
Oh, and there's a really good chance that the Nibelungenlied epic is going to get...
I like that word. That might be my new favorite word instead of discombobulated.
Convinced by now. Oh, and there's a really good chance that the Nibelungenlied epic is going to get mixed with legends surrounding the Holy Grail, specifically from the opera Parsifal, which was also written by Wagner. Stories about the Holy Grail is where the name Amfortis comes from. He was the Fisher King, who was the name for a person whose responsibility was to protect the Holy Grail. The Swan Knights from Conria also appeared to be in the story of Parsifal, which is another name for Percival, an Arthurian knight who sought out the Holy Grail and who also features as the main character for another one of Wagner's operas, Parsifal. And the Swan Knight makes an appearance in another opera of Wagner called Lohengrin, wherein the main character, Lohengrin, is the Swan Knight himself. Lohengrin is even Parsifal's son, so the connections here are not arbitrary. But that will not stop me from making an arbitrary transition into an entirely new topic.
Oh, dear God.
I have been screaming about the false sky since version 1.1, and this...
Brand, do you think that maybe the ring was what Dane was talking about in the Chasm quest, where he says something along the lines of how could he have survived without it? I think that's how he said it. Can't remember it word for word. I also don't remember it word for word, so I'd have to have a look at that, because I don't remember that at all. Who's it talking about by him? Probably Halfdan?
Parry quest just...
Halfdan?
Mess with my head. So the whole quest that you do with Sorush is about fixing the sky.
Maybe it's like a curse prevention ring.
The skeptics say that the Oasis tree is merely showing an illusion of the abyss in the sky. But honey, I got news for you.
It's far
more likely that the energy from the tree that is blasting the sky is actually revealing what's truly beyond the firmament, the false sky.
Yeah.
But it's kind of trippy because if you go and stand on this hole in the ground and then you look down, you'll realize that your vantage point is from the hole in the sky.
Yeah, that's
You're
weird,
literally looking down on the tree that's halfway across the desert, which means that the gray crystals in the sky are just the undersides of these crystallized trees that are in around the hole in the ground. This is made stranger by the fact that after you clear this quest and the tree stops shooting light at the sky, you can jump into the hole in the ground and you'll be put through a time tunnel, which warps you to the top of the tree.
Come! Oh my god, is that Jeff? Thank you for the raid, dude, and the 15-month resub. Holy shit. Very proud of the stream, recorded a video. Pog. I liked your title and thumbnail and stuff for the Eula ones, Jeff. I liked that. That was very Pog. Very good. Very funny indeed. This is Ashikai, yeah.
Which means that this.
Should you be careful talking about leaks? Yeah.
This thing right here.
Hula?
It's a literal wormhole. There's nothing illusory about it. And yes, its real in-game name is Time Tunnel. There's this one that takes you to the Spiral Abyss, the Perpetual Mechanical Array, and there's like 3 more in Enkanomiya.
Is it actually just called a Time Tunnel in-game?
And the first time you pass through one, you get an achievement that calls itself a Time Tunnel. So that is an official name. I did not make that up.
Oh.
But for the love of God and Ra and all things holy, Scaramouche, please come back and reconcile these damn stars because I can't take it anymore.
Or, here's a better one, just make the event replayable so I can experience it, because I still get confused and wish I could have actually just been there for it to understand it better. That'd be a lot
All right,
better.
that's enough heavy analysis.
okay with
It's
that.
time for the rapid fire roundup. The little section I put at the end of these little lore recaps.
It's like the one thing that I missed in the whole game, chat. It pretty much, like, when it comes to the lore and everything, that is the one event that I missed that is pretty necessary for a lot of the lore stuff.
Videos where I go over all of the
Same.
random little ideas that weren't fleshed out enough to be their own section, but I still want to mention anyway. So,
Sucks.
here we go, starting off with the Oceanids. Now, it's very easy
Raiders, this one's for you, because I already know what my chat would say. Oceanid, smash up ass.
to miss this lore bit, but because the original Hydro Archon died and became the Amrita and the Vorokasha Oasis, the Oceanids of Fontaine often make pilgrimages to the
You'd be
Oasis
surprised.
to pay their respects and as a rite of passage. Most of the Oceanids don't care for their new Hydro Archon, Fosalor, and many of them left Fontaine entirely. One of them ended up in Springvale, and Rodea ended up in Chingsa.
Rodea of the Loch.
And yeah, I know, I don't think it's a mistake either that
Pass, she doesn't seem like she knows what she wants. Yeah, she fucking does. She wants you fucking dead.
Oceanids
She
look
wants
a
you
lot
fucking
like
dead.
both the Sealies and the Perry. I'm thinking that maybe
Not like that,
they
Jinx.
might also be a type of Kavarna, you know, like of the former Hydro Archon, which would explain why they don't like the new one all
God
that
damn
much.
it.
Speaking of, I put this in my Fontaine speculation video, but I wanted to mention it here too. The Mark of Apatia is named after the Zoroastrian god of drought, Apatia, who fought against the god of rain known as Tishtraya, or alternatively Tir Yazad. But both of these deities took the forms of horses, one black, one white. What I neglected to add in my Fontaine video is that there are a lot of water horse mythologies out there. Kelpies and hippocamps immediately come to mind.
The power of water is its ability to take any shape. We get it. You're insecure about what you look like, but just take one form. Holy. Oh, I understand. Oh, I get it now. I get it now. So it's not the water or anything that puts you off. It's the fact that it can't decide on a shape. All right, so Jeff, I've got another one for you then. Vaporeon, smash.
Mind, and Poseidon, the great god of the sea, was said to be both the tamer and father of all
Hey,
horses.
Vaporeon's decisive,
I think
dude.
this, coupled with the repeated themes of purity, suggests that
Never
both
played
the
Pokemon
current and
and-
former Hydro Archons may be based on water horse myths, or unicorns, or both. We'll see. Apep had one line that completely threw me for an unexpected loop. She says, in war, the victor would inherit the right to shape the world while the losers must turn to ash, which is a
What is that word, Jeff? What does that mean?
line basically lifted right out of the Travail trailer during the section on Natlin. I'm
I've never
curious
seen that
if,
word.
given
Into
the
animals?
context, that Natlin is a rebellious
Not
nation
even dragons? Are you saying you'd pass on a pep?
against Celestia, and that's why we don't meet any NPCs from there. Alternatively, I wonder if that's the nation where we suddenly get all of the dragon lore. Like, all of it. Just like a
A
whole
pep is a mythical creature. Oh, sorry. Yeah, let me just go out and catch a fucking Vaporeon. Sorry, Zapdos. Yeah, I'm streaming. Come back later.
a whole slew of dragons. I want a dragon country.
What do you
That'd be
mean?
so cool. But here's another fun fact. The
You got a
warden
Lapras in your
enemy
fucking
inside of a pep
backyard?
is actually really tiny. It's this little Magatama-shaped bean, and when I saw it, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd seen it before in a similar context, and I
We're going to change this whole topic of conversation because I can't unsee this as something different now.
thought I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd seen it before in a similar context, and I had. It turns out the Marana that you fight during the Aranyaka quest has a very similar symbol on the inside.
Wait,
It doesn't
really?
seem to correspond to any in-game language, so I'm not sure what it means.
That's a stretch. I don't see that shit. I don't fucking see that.
Inside. It doesn't seem to correspond to any in-game language, so I'm not sure what it means, but since bits of a pep turned into the Withering, I can't help but wonder if this incarnation of
Unless I'm
Marana
not looking at it right.
was a bit of a pep too. Do you guys remember Babel? You know, the busty matriarch that took in Jet
Who could forget?
after her father died? Well, you can actually find a few notes scattered around the new area of the desert that talk about her parents. The short version of her story is that her mother was a Vahumana scholar who was traveling the desert with her husband and a Tanit bodyguard. Her mother ended up giving birth while her husband was away, and Babel did a number on her, is how it was put. The Tanit mercenary then put her mother out of her misery and decided to raise Babel in the ways of the Tanit. This makes Babel calling Jet an outsider kinda hypocritical and ironic
Yeah.
since they literally had the same origins. Clementine has made a really nice video
Babel.
analysis on this, so I will leave a link below if you're interested in like the whole detailed story. Okay, last thing I want to cover. The songs of the Caverna are something I didn't really think much of, although I did think it was kind of weird that they had a physical form, but then my buddy Saber pointed out something kind of odd. She said that the great songs all looked like this one part of the domain mural. And she's right. And that got me thinking.
Oh, yeah, actually. Yeah. I thought they meant the whole thing then. No, I can see that. This part here, too deep. No, I can see that. I can definitely see that. You got the two wings on either side. You got the little floaty at the bottom and then the head. I can see it.
And she's right. And that got me thinking. These great songs
Maybe
come
a
from
slight
the
stretch,
Caverna
but I can
of the
see it.
Goddess of Flowers. And the Goddess of Flowers also taught Rukkhadevata something called the Source Song. And when Rukkhadevata sang this song, it literally summoned an Ashvata tree directly from Irminsul, which then created an entire race of Aranara. So do you guys think that...
Can you, like, do that again? I'm curious, dude. Could you just do that again?
like songs
just make more.
kind of like reality code, like the source song is the source code of reality? Because if it is, then Venti is looking mighty suspicious all of a sudden.
True.
Well, more than usual, anyway. Venti's always suspicious. Who am I kidding?
Yeah.
But oh man, there are so many little details in this quest, I swear. Like, this one area of the desert has Enkanamian architecture, and how one area of the Vorokasha Oasis is like one of 4 areas in the whole game that has a voiced music track, and it just so happens to be a place.
And they fucking killed it, dude. And the name of the song is like the 3 something as well, and it sounds like 3 different voices.
Where a god died, and like all of the Conrians' crazy technology information that totally deserves
Caress
its
of
own
Three
video in and of
Mothers,
itself
yeah.
that I'll get to eventually, probably. Oh my god, I just
Listen, Caress of Three Mothers sounds pretty bad. Just imagine Kafka, Yalan, and like sorry, let's finish the
and
video.
then there's all this stuff on Hive Minds that I really want to go over, and I will. That's my next video, I promise. But man, this endless backlog of video topics never stops growing, and I'm drowning. I'm drowning right before Fontaine comes out. It's so fitting. Anyway, I have a lot to do and not a lot of time, so let me quickly but gratefully thank all of those crazy channel members for their unwavering support.
God
It is
damn, that's a lot of channel
incredible to
members.
watch you all grow in number. My God. I am equal parts humbled and flattered every time I gaze upon your little YouTube badges. You grow up so fast. But member
Good
or
video,
not,
dude.
you made it all the way to the end of this video, so let me thank you specifically.
You're welcome. But let me link that in chat so y'all can go watch it as well, chat. There it is. Make sure you go give it a watch. Ashikai is always so fucking smart, dude. Ashikai is always so smart.